Thank you for that introduction. So we've had a lot of talking going on today, and thankfully for you guys, I enjoy talking a lot too. So I'm sure most of the class knows that, and a couple months ago when we were told to come up with a Mac Live talk, this should have been relatively simple for a girl who's constantly being told to shut up. However, when it came to actually develop a concept, I was left feeling like this. Incredibly overwhelmed and also completely stumped. Yes, there is a lot to talk about, but I was left with the question of how do you deliver something that is engaging, inspiring, original, and intrinsically unique to me in a world where it feels like everything has already been said and everything has already been done. So I found myself feeling like just another ordinary girl in Adidas Originals, ironically not feeling original at all, and being unsure how to get out of this rut. I decided to embrace it. So today I present you with my Mac Live topic, being different like everybody else. I won't shy away from the fact that the fields I'll be talking about today are vast and complex. Creativity and ideation, being the development of ideas, are becoming increasingly prevalent in our lives. Whether you are ordering an Uber from that ingenious app on the way home from the jaw, coming up with a standout answer in an interview that gets you the job, or coming up with a wacky 21st outfit, creativity and it's a moth to the flame, by the way, in case you didn't get it. Creativity and ideation are all around us. The world is moving at an incredibly fast pace, and in order to make sure that you make your mark, one needs to prioritize these. And the big challenge is to insert your unique voice in the never-ending stream of concepts and content. So today, my role is to highlight a few unexpected finds that inspired, encouraged, and motivated me. And I hope that they will do the same to you when navigating your originality or your perceived lack thereof in what seems to be a highly oversaturated world. So my first find is called Embrace the Sneakily Familiar. So how would you feel if I told you that every person in this room is part of a cult? Before you start freaking out, Mum and Dad, don't worry, I'm not joining a cult. According to best-selling author and journalist Derek Thompson, we live in what he describes as a cult of the new. Spotify releases 13,000 new songs every month. In the last couple of months, there have been over 6,000 new apps released on Androids. These are just two examples, but there's more content than ever before, and society craves this novelty. It's one of the reasons why this Gap campaign failed. They tried to sell dressing normally, but no consumer wants to do what they've always done, and so their sales dropped. They want something new and surprising and unfamiliar. However, I'd like to add that people's desires for novelty are actually bigger than their appetites. What this means is that a lot of the time, what we actually crave isn't really new. People spend 90% of their time listening to music that they've already heard, and the vast majority of best-selling movies are either reboots, adaptations, or sequels. People don't engage with things as much that are entirely new. They like things that are sneakily familiar. Another example of this is when Spotify launched their very famous Discover Weekly playlist. There was a bug in the algorithm, and so what was meant to be entirely new songs ended up having a few old songs in it. So Spotify fixed the bug, and what they found was that this playlist actually decreased in popularity, so they added the old songs back in. That's another example of the sneakily familiar. So what? Why am I telling you this? Having spoken to a number of young people who create and ideate, there is an acknowledged pressure to come up with something fresh and new, but embracing the societal desire for the sneakily familiar takes away this pressure. Even the inventor of cars said, Henry Ford, I invented nothing new. I simply assembled the discoveries of other men behind whom were centuries of work. So instead, we can look at what already exists and come up with concepts that may be familiar, but still interesting and surprising with what we add to them. It's about inserting yourself in another narrative. Which leads me to my next point, which is to adopt Poe. And I don't mean the Teletubby, although the playfulness of Poe and that concept isn't too far off. So Edward de Bono is known as the father of lateral thinking, which sounds complex, but it basically means that he chooses to apply creativity. And he developed the concept of PO. A simple explanation would be allowing your mind to doodle. So PO tackles various terms and encourages one to hypothesize, suppose, come up with possibilities, and then also embrace provocation operation, which is a fancy way of saying to provoke. So PO, a simpler definition would be a meaningless word to provoke and challenge things in a meaningful way. Whether they realized it or not, the founders of Airbnb adopted PO. They needed to make money, and so they provoked and challenged the traditional accommodation systems and came up with a pretty wild idea. Let strangers stay on an airbed in your house and get them to pay you for it. They hypothesized that it would change the hotel industry when investors doubted them, and it did. They applied creativity wherever they could and provoked the situations that they were in. And even when investors didn't back them, they let their minds doodle to random ideas to sell their self-made brand of Obama-O's during the presidential election to build Airbnb further. They sold them for $40, and it was this adopting of PO that caught the eye of investors and the creativity that they applied. So don't underestimate the power of PO to provoke a current situation even when it doesn't seem to make sense at the time. With creative thinking can come great ideas, but too often we value ideas too much. This sounds pretty strange, right, to devalue ideas, but ideas are not like miracles. They don't just come and go to those who are lucky enough to receive them. Often they come from the will to question. We need to shift the thinking around ideas from being blueprint to being questions that we come up with and can build on. Patagonia didn't start with a big idea, and neither did Instagram, and they are two of the most successful brands around today. Patagonia started with one man's will to question the world of hiking, and he used tools, and he looked at the tools that were around and decided to attempt to develop them further to make them applicable to his own. Instagram started as a location notification app, but the determination and willingness of these founders to continue to question and observe made them what they are today. So now we're in a point where everyone in this room is aware of the same network of information. So where does that leave us? This can kind of be scary. What separates us now knowing all the same things that I've just shared with you, and how are we different, and why should we try to be original and unique? The reason being is that it's an opportunity to leave a mark and to make a difference and do something that really goes beyond what we see in front of us. And it all depends on what we generate from that common shared information. This applies not just to the room that I'm speaking in now, but to everything. There will always be common shared information on which we can build and develop new ideas. In this room, there are, well, definitely over 52 voices and 52 brains, because obviously that was the Mac Live class. But all of these, we all have a different voice because of the memories and the experiences that we have shaped around us. What I've learned this year the most, and what's been incredibly encouraging, is knowing that with these various voices, we can actually work together to come up with new ideas. Our creativity comes from without, not from within. We are not self-made, we are dependent on one another. This was from a TED Talk that I highly recommend you check out. Just type in Kirby Ferguson. I can't remember the name of it, sorry, I've gone blank. But essentially the end of is that there's nothing wrong with being different like everyone else, because we can feed off of everyone else's experiences and apply unique thinking to come up with creative ideas and things that really can make an impact. Thank you.